In this video, I'm going to show you an advanced application of fields parameters in Power BI, which covers things like grouping of fields, addressing any sorting issues that might pop up along the way, as well as how we can use the field parameter slicers as cards at the same time. Now, the example that we are going to build is this one over here, where we can choose a certain metric. We can also choose whether the metric should be calculated as a running total or not, and we don't have any sorting issues when we switch to a different metric. All right, let's dive in. In almost any Power BI report, I'm using field parameters. Now, for the user, they're amazing because they can choose what metric or what field they want to see. For the Power BI developer, they're also amazing because, well, they're quite easy to set up. It's just for the advanced applications, sometimes it gets a little bit tricky, and that's what we're going to focus on in this video. Now, let's get started with the easy stuff. Let's go here to modeling and then new parameter fields. Now, here we can choose the fields or the measures that we want to have in the parameter that the user can switch between. Now, in my case, that's going to be sales, cost, and profit. Now, then we can give it a name. So usually I start with PRM for parameter, and then here this is a metric switch. I also want to add a slicer to the page, so that's all good. And let's click on create. Now here we have the slicer, which lets me choose the metric that I want to see in that column chart over there. However, first I still need to go to that chart, and then instead of having sales on the y-axis, I need to replace this with my new field parameter over there. And that's it. So now I can switch between the different measures. Perfect. Okay, so that's already working. Now I just want to make it look a little bit better. So let me switch from an old slicer to a new slicer. So I select over here the old slicer and then choose the new slicer instead. Now let me resize it, just like this, and adjust the formatting a little bit. So let's go to formatting. Let's get rid of the title. Then the callout value I want to show in the middle. All right. And instead of din, I want to have Segui. And if we go further down, then for the buttons here, I don't want to have a fill color. I don't want to have the border. And instead, I'm going to go for an accent bar. But that accent bar, I only want to have for the selected state. So first, go for the selected state. Then turn the accent bar on, and over here I want to have the accent bar at the bottom. Perfect. And then here we can also play around with the width. Now, where is the text for the selected item? Well, that one is still showing in white. So we have to go to callout values again, select it, and then here I'm going to change the color to black. All right, and then I can take my slicer and just connect it there at the top to my column chart. Perfect. Okay, so now it looks like it all belongs nicely together. Now, the next thing that I want to do is show the value of the selected metric on the slicer button. So basically we're going to, well, use the slicer as a card at the same time. All right, now to achieve that, we can make use of the labels on the callout values, because there we have values, which is what we currently have there, and we have labels. All right, now I'm going to turn the label on. Nothing changes just yet, but over here we can now add a field to the label. Now I want to have that for the default. Let's turn it on again, and then click here on add data. Now what do we want to show? Well, we want to show the values of these measures on top of the slicer buttons. Okay, now to be able to do that, we need a new measure, just one measure that returns the corresponding value of the field that shows in the slicer. So let's do exactly that. Now I'm going to call this one selected metric value formatted. Now the formatted part will become clear in a second. Now for this, we need to know which metric is in the filter context. And there can only be, in this case, one selected. So you might think, oh, let's go for a selected value function. Right, so selected value, and then I want to check the parameter switch, that column for the field parameter, and then close the selected value function. Now, if I place this one on a card visual, and it gives me an error. Unfortunately, we cannot use the selected value function to figure out which field of the fields parameter is selected. Okay, so what is another option? Well, another option would be to use one of the other columns in the fields parameter table, for example, the sorting column, or we can use the max function as long as we know that there's only one item selected in the slicer, which for us is the case when we just make sure that here in the formatting and we have single select turned on. Okay, so let me go back to our measure, and then here I replace selected value with max. And you see now it works. So let's go back to our measure, and now we can wrap this inside of a switch function to say switch. Now check which one is selected, and if it's equal to the sales, then return the sales measure. All right, now let me also add the other ones. There you go, and now we can use this measure for the labels of the callout values on the slicer. So let's go back to formatting, callout values, and then here we have label. Now we can add that measure that we just created. And well, the value shows, but it doesn't look that good, right? So we need to format the value, and that's why I call that measure selected metric value formatted, because now we need a format function to say how it should be formatted. So over here, I want to format the sales, let's say in millions. So here the formatting string is as follows: pound symbol, comma, pound symbol, 0. That makes sure that we have the thousand separator always. And if we want to have it in millions, then at the end we need 2 commas and then .0 for 1 decimal place. And I want to have an M after it to say that it's in millions. Now, if you don't know how these formatting strings work, just check out this video over here. All right, now let me close the format function and do the same for the other ones. So I'm just going to copy the format function over here and here, as well as that last part with the formatting string. And now let's check our values again. That looks much better. Okay, now the next thing that I want to do is place the labels on top, which is relatively easy. So we go back to the formatting options, position of the labels above the value. And then what I would do is make the values bigger than the description of the field. So over here, I'm going to put the font size to 20. Let's make it black. And then for the selected one, I want the color to be blue, just like this. And then for the values, there for the default, I want to have a lighter gray. So let's go for gray, and let's make it also a little bit smaller, just like this. You can also go for cursive if you like. Okay, now I think this is fine. And then for the selected state, I want to have the same color gray. Now maybe instead of 10, let's go for 12. So back to default, let's go for 12. And then I would also increase the space between the label and the value, which we can do when we switch to default state, then scroll down, and here we have the space between the label and the value, and that one I would put up a little bit. Okay, also make sure that the card is high enough so that it can add the space also there at the bottom. All right, so we are basically using our slicer buttons as cards at the same time. Okay, now let me get rid of that card and see if everything works as it should. Perfect. Short interruption. If you got value from this video so far, then make sure to hit that subscribe button. That's the best way to support this channel, where I have hundreds of free Power BI videos for you to watch. Now, if you like learning with me in a more structured way, then check out my trainings over here. Now, thank you, and let's go back to the video. All right, now as the next step, we're going to add a functionality that lets the user choose whether the sales should show as is, or it should show as a running total. So basically, we give the user the option to change how the sales should be computed. All right, now let's go to our fields parameter table. Now here we're going to make a few changes. What we have at the moment are those measures that do not accumulate, right? Are not showing the running total, but just the filtered values, so like sales, cost, profit. So non-cumulative. Okay, and then what I want to add as extra options are the cumulative ones, the running totals. Okay, now for that we can just copy over what we have already there. Okay, and don't forget the comma there at the end. Now here we're going to have sales, let's call it to date, and then I copy that over also here to cost and profit. Of course, we do still need to create these measures that calculate the sales to date, cost to date, and profit to date. So let's do that as the next step. Let's go here to our measure table, new measure, and let's call this one sales to date is equal to. Then let's work with variables. We have the selected max date, which is going to be equal to max dim date date. Then we also need to know the overall minimum. So that's going to be min date overall, which is equal to, well, here we need to have a calculate function that's going to find the minimum date. but this should not be the minimum date within any filter context, but the overall minimum that we have in the data set. Now, here we can remove the filters. So I'm going to use all selected, keeping any filters of a period that might be selected in slice or in the filter section. So all selected dim date date. Now then for the second argument, we need to remove the filter on the date table. We can do that with remove filters or all selected if you want to keep any filters from outside the visual, for example, slices or filter section, and we want to remove it from the date table. Okay, so now that we have these two, we can go to the third variable where we're going to calculate the result. So that's going to be equal to, well, here we can use calculate again. We are calculating the sales. Then we can remove the filters again from the date table. All right. So dim date date. So we remove any filter that we have on the date table, and we're going to replace that with the date field that we have in our financials table, which is called here period. All right, needs to be below or equal to that max date. All right, so selected max date, and at the same time it needs to be bigger than or equal to the min date. Okay. So that's it, and then we can return the result. So now that we have this, we need to do the same for the cost and the profit, and then use those measures in our fields parameter. Okay, so let me do this. Now here we have the to-date measures, then we go back to the parameter table, and there we just need to update those last three to the to-date variations. Now also important is that here we have a different sorting number, right? So that third column is for the sorting. So I want to have these as 1, 2, 3, and then these as 4, 5, 6. Now then here, the name of the table matrix where I store these measures, well, let's select it and then Control-Shift-L to select all of these instances, delete it, because, well, you don't need the name of the table in front of the measure. Okay, now if I go back to the report, then, well, it looks a little bit weird. Now let's make it a little bit higher, this slicer. And you see, we have over here sales, cost, profit, just like before. Now for the sales to date, cost to date, and profit to date, we are not returning the value just yet, right? But we can select them and you see we have there the running totals of these metrics. Okay, good. So it is working. However, if I would just leave it like this, it's a bit of a weird experience, right? So what I would want to have is that the user can choose just sales, cost, profit, and then have a second slicer where they can choose, I want to have the to-date or running total, right, versus the normal value. Okay, now for that, we're going to group the metrics. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to go back to our parameter table. Now here, we're going to add a new column. And the way to do that is just to go to each field and then add a fourth value, which is going to create the fourth column. Now here, for the first ones, is this going to be a running total? No. So I'm just going to return no, and I do the same thing for the other two over here. And then for the last three, the to-date ones, well, there I return yes. You see, that gives us a new column. We can rename it. So let's call this one cumulative. And with that new column, we can go back to our report, and then we can add a new slicer, place it here on the right-hand side, and on it, I'm going to have as a field that new column cumulative. Now at the moment, I just see no. Why is that? Because, well, this slicer is filtering the other one. So I could turn off the interaction by selecting the slicer, going to format, edit the interaction, and say it should not filter this one. And now we have both buttons. All right, so now I can switch between yes and no. However, when I switch now to no, well, my column chart disappears. Well, it's still there, but it doesn't show any values. Now, the reason for that is here we have no, but, well, in the other slicer, we still have one of the to-date metrics selected. So this slicer says, show me the non-cumulative values. And there in the other slicer, we have a cumulative value selected. So then nothing remains, right? So we have to come up with a different solution. And the way to do that is to, again, add a new column to our fields parameter table. And this column is going to be for the metric category, which for the first one is sales. So we have sales there, and we have sales also over here. And then we can do the same for cost and profit. And there you go. There we have a new column, which is then for the metric category. Now, if we then go back to our report view, now here for the slicer, we are not going to use that first column in the fields parameter table, but the category column. So I'm going to go here to builds. I'm going to replace what we have here as a field with that metric category. So that when I select over here one of the metrics, let's say sales, and then here, whether it should be cumulative, no or yes, well then only one item, one field remains and shows over here my column chart. So if I switch now to cumulative, I see the cumulative sales. And the same if I go here to profit, I see the cumulative profit, well, or the non-running total. Okay, so I can nicely now switch between the metrics as well as how that metric should be calculated. Good, now let's work again a bit on the formatting because now it doesn't look so good anymore. So this one can now again be less high. I'm going to place it over here. And this, whether it should be a running total or not, I want to place, let's say, in the top left corner of the chart. Now there's not much space there at the top of the chart. So we can either work with a background shape or we can go to formatting and then here size and style padding. I want to have the maximum padding at the top. We already have. Now, if you need more space, you can also make use of the title. So over here, just have empty space for the title. And then for the subtitle, you could do the same. You could even add a divider. So just to push basically that column chart a little bit down. And then over here, just make sure that you have it in white. And then here also in white. And then for the subtitle, that nothing shows. And then for the divider, also white. You see that would give us a little bit of extra space. If you say, oh, it's too much, just turn one of these elements off. Good, and then we can take our running total slicer over here. And instead of cumulative, I would just say to date, yes, no. I would also make it smaller. And the same for the buttons that we show on the slicer. Let's make that smaller as well. And for the buttons, we probably also have some padding. So over here for the default state, I would say custom, and then put everything to 0. Perfect. Now, the callout values, I want to show us in the middle, and then we can make it smaller, smaller, smaller. Now, there's still a little bit of a placeholder there on the right-hand side, and that is probably the layout. So I want to have everything in a single row. Good. Now, that is much better. Now, let's see if it works. Perfect. Now, let me just turn off the edit interactions. I see I can nicely switch between everything. However, if I switch to date, my values now disappeared. Okay, now that can be easily fixed by going back to our selected metric formatted measure. And here we can say that we want to return the sales cost profit also for the to date ones. So I'm just going to add over here sales to date, and then when it's sales to date, then I want to have sales to date. All right, and then we can do the same for cost and profit. Perfect, so we have our values back, and if we switch from to date yes to date no, well, everything still works. Now these values don't change in our case because we don't have any outside filters on the period, right? So then the sales is the same as sales to date. Okay. All right, so that is all working. Now the last thing that I want to show you is what to do if any sorting issues pop up. Now let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to have here another chart, and let's say it's going to be a column chart as well. So I'm just going to copy this chart here to the right, and let me just get rid of that title section there at the top. And I'm going to replace the year and the month with a different field. So here on the x-axis, let's say we want to have a breakdown by product. Okay, then we can go here to the 3 dots to set up the sorting order by profit in, let's say, descending order is fine. Okay, now if I switch here to sales, then you see that the sorting order remains. Okay, perfect. This is exactly what I was hoping for. Now, but what happens if I have another breakdown on the x-axis to go to the next level? Or well, we have over here, let's say, a country. Okay, now just simply by adding country there, even if I go to the top level, you see the sorting disappears. So now I'm sorting by product, but I want to have by sales. I want it to be in descending order, just like we had before. Okay, perfect, fixed it. But then I switch to profit, and oh, the sorting is messed up again. Okay. And if I switch back to sales, you see it doesn't remember the sorting order. So just by adding that extra field on the x-axis, well, messes up the sorting. Okay, so that's a bit of a problem. Now, what is a little bit weird is that if I would not have a column chart, but I would have, let's say, a bar chart, then this problem is not there. You see, over here, when I now switch to cost, profit, sales, now it does remember that it should sort by the selected value. Now, what it depends on and why it's different from one visual to the other is a little bit questionable, right? And also, if this would be a table, let's make this a table or matrix, whatever you prefer. And then I would just leave the product in. And over here, I want to sort by sales. Okay. This is the sorting order that I want to have also here for profit. But you see, it doesn't sort by the value. Okay, so I can try again. Sort by profit, switch it to sales, and the sorting order is messed up again. So here, it does not even work with just one breakdown field. Okay, so it's a little bit inconsistent. Now, the sorting would also break when you have a breakdown field like product that has a sort by column applied. So let me show you what I mean. So let's make this a bar chart again. And let's make sure that the parameter is on the x-axis. So now everything is good and fine. But if I go here to my product table, select product, and then say, it should be sorted by product sort, everything still works, everything is good. Now, there's no problem just yet, but if I switch to profit, it doesn't work anymore. You see? Now, the sorting is messed up. So, the question is how to fix any sorting issues when you're working with fields parameters. Okay, so to fix this, what we can do is make another measure, and that measure is going to be very similar to what we have over here. So I'm going to reuse that one, and I'm going to make a new one, paste it in here. Now, here I want to have the not formatted version, because the format function returns that value as text, and therefore I don't want that. So I'm going to use Control-Shift-L to return all of the similar instances of the format function, delete it. Then I'm going to do exactly the same over here, Control-Shift-L, delete it. Oh, there's one left there. And then just format it nicely and press enter. Now that measure we can now use here on the bar chart, and we are going to use it on the tooltip. So let's go over here and then place it on tooltips. Now, why on tooltips? Because in this way, it doesn't really change the visual, just the tooltip, of course, but that one we can customize anyways. And then we can go here to the three dots, and you see we can sort by that measure that I added to the tooltips. So the selected metric value. And that's exactly what we need. Because now, you see, I can nicely switch between profit, cost, and sales. And this is nicely sorted in the order that I want it to be, in descending order by the selected value. Okay, so we're almost there. Now, the only thing that still bothers me a little bit is the sorting order of these buttons. So let's go over here to sort, and then sort in descending order. And that gives me sales, profit, cost. Now I want that sales, cost, profit. Okay, so let's go to the parameters table and let's see what we have. We're using the metric category on the slicer, and well, now it's just sorting in alphabetical order, sales, cost, profit. Now I want to have it, well, in this order over here. But if I would go here to sort by column and then say, I want to use the order column for the metric switch, it will give me an error. Why? Because here we have sales 2 times. Here we say it should be ranked first. Here it should be ranked fourth. Cannot be. We need to have one unique value being assigned to each metric category. So again, we need to add another column for the sorting order of the metric category. So here we're going to have 1 for the sales, then I want to have 2 for the cost, and 3 for the profit. And there, for the second group, we're going to have also 1, 2, 3. Okay, and that is then going to be my metric category sort, which we can use to sort the metric category column. So let's select the metric category column, go to sort by, and here we want to have the metric category sort. And that should work. So back to our report view. Now we can say sort in ascending order. Perfect. Sales, cost, profit. So this is now working perfectly. And also if we would have, let's say here, a table, Okay. Then if I switch here to sales cost, you see everything is still sorted in descending order. But you probably say, yeah, but now you have their selected metric value right next to it. Well, that is true. However, you can make it disappear by making it smaller, smaller, smaller. Now you see text wrap is on, which we should turn off. So let's go to formatting of the table, then go here to values and turn text wrap off for the values as well as the column headers. They also have text wrap. And then you can just make it smaller, 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 smaller until it disappears. You see? And now we have it also working for a table. All right, now I hope that you liked my more advanced application of fields parameters. Now maybe you have more tips and tricks that are super useful for working with field parameters, then let me know in the comment section below. Also, if you have any questions, let me know. Now, if you want to dive a little bit deeper into the topic of fields parameters, check out these videos over here. Now, if you want to build reports with me from beginning to end, then check out my upcoming design training over there. I want to thank you for watching and see you in the next video.